In a world full of pain, hope never dies. This is the unbelievable true story of a mother who adopted a teenage boy, only to discover he was the son she lost 10 years earlier. A journey of love, resilience, and a miracle that proves a mother's heart never gives up. Watch until the end, you won't believe what happens. In the heart of Ohio, in a town called Maplewood, time seemed to move more slowly. It was one of those places where cars honked less, neighbors waved to each other, and the smell of baking apple pie mixed with the fresh summer air. And right in the middle of it all were Isabella Miller and her son, Ethan. Ethan was a 3-year-old bundle of pure energy. His golden hair seemed to glow in the sun, and his eyes, as blue as the summer sky, were always filled with curiosity. He didn't walk, he bounced. He didn't just talk, he chattered, turning every leaf and every butterfly into a new and incredible discovery. That day, July 17th, was one of those perfect days. The park's grass was green and soft. Isabella sat on a worn wooden bench, her hands busy folding flyers for a local church charity event. Every now and then, she would look up, a gentle smile on her face as she watched Ethan running, a small blur of pure happiness, chasing a yellow butterfly near the playground fence. His laughter was a melody that made her heart swell with joy. It was a scene so ordinary, so peaceful, that it would be impossible to imagine that moments later, it would become the last perfect memory of her life. But like a cruel magic trick, the happiness unraveled. Isabella lifted her eyes from the flyer, and for an instant, her heart froze. That golden blur which had been there moments ago was gone. Her entire body shivered with a sense of emptiness. She stood up silently, her voice coming out as a whisper. Ethan? She repeated his name, louder this time, panic starting to rise in her throat. Ethan, where are you? My love. She threw the flyers onto the bench and ran towards the fence. Her eyes scanned every corner, under the slide, behind the swings, near the big oak tree. But nothing, no sound, no scream, just silence. For Isabella, everything went quiet, a silence that weighed a ton. Panic turned into desperation. She began screaming his name, her voice cutting through the peaceful air like a sharp knife. Ethan, please, Ethan. For the rest of the world, time continued its course. The seasons changed, Christmas came and went. The children of Maplewood grew up, and new children came to the park. But for Isabella, time stopped on that fateful July 17th. Each day was a repetition of the same emptiness, a silent torture, punctuated only by the pain of absence. Her friends and family tried to help. You need to move on, Isabella, they said, with the best of intentions. He's probably gone. Those words were like knives. How could she move on when the most important part of her was missing? How could she accept the idea that Ethan was gone when her heart, her soul, screamed that he was still out there? Isabella's house became a sanctuary. Ethan's room remained exactly as he had left it. The bed with dinosaur sheets, the toy cars perfectly lined up on the floor, the teddy bear propped against the pillow. Isabella spent hours there, sitting on the floor, smelling the scent that still lingered on Ethan's shirt, a scent that mixed with laundry soap and a child's perfume. The room was not a place of sadness for her. It was a place of hope. The living room walls were transformed into a kind of mural of hope. Photos of Ethan from every angle covered the walls, as if the power of the images could bring him back. A photo of him laughing on a swing. Another, with his lips stained with chocolate. A black and white one where his eyes gleamed with mischief. And there was the map panel. Isabella had a map of the United States with pushpins. Each pushpin represented a clue, a rumor, a theory. With each new lead, she drove for hours, sometimes days, chasing ghosts, only to find disappointment. The pain of not knowing was the cruelest of all. It's worse than a funeral, she once thought. At least with a funeral, there is an ending. For me, there is none. It's a mystery without end. Isabella's pain became her strength. She learned to live with the emptiness, to live with the solitude. Her determination was strengthened. She began working with search groups, helping other mothers going through the same nightmare. She became the voice that said, "Don't give up. Don't stop searching. Hope is the only thing you can't lose." Every year, on July 17th, she would go to Maplewood Park. She would sit on the same bench. In her hand, a single yellow balloon. She would release it into the sky, a small beacon of hope, and whisper, her voice choked with emotion, "Wherever you are, "My son, I will find you." And then, on August 18th, 10 years after the disappearance, something changed. Isabella was volunteering at a local foster care center for teenagers. She spent her time there, finding solace and helping young people in difficult situations. She wasn't actively looking for Ethan. She had stopped actively searching and was simply living, until in a hallway, she saw a face that made the world stop again. A 13-year-old boy, with sad eyes, looking at the floor. He was quiet, withdrawn, but there was something about him, a way of walking, a certain angle to his chin, a familiarity that was eerily familiar. His name was Michael. Other parents, seeing her distress, stood up. They joined the search, calling out the name of the boy they had never met. Within minutes, a crowd had formed. The sun, which had been warming Isabella's skin, suddenly felt cold and distant. The police arrived. The entire town joined the search, sent dogs, helicopters flying overhead. But it was as if the earth had swallowed the boy. The days turned into nights. The summer sun was replaced by a cold rain. Maplewoods Park, once a symbol of joy, became a monument to pain. By the end of that week, the searches were winding down. The crowd dispersed. But for Isabella, the world had stopped. Her life, once a colorful tapestry, was now a black and white fabric. Ethan's laughter became an echo in her mind. The last image of him, running after a butterfly, was what she saw. When she closed her eyes, the question, "Where did he go?" became the only thing that mattered. And deep down in her heart, she knew that the answer to that question would be her only mission for the rest of her life. The New Beginnings Foster Care Center was a place full of promises and broken hearts. Isabella, with her own broken heart, had found a new reason to live there, a way to channel her pain into something positive. She spent hours talking with the teenagers, listening to their stories, planting seeds of hope where before there was only hopelessness. One day, a new intake form was placed on her desk. Name: Michael. Age: 13. History: incomplete. It only stated that he had been found on a highway, disoriented, and that he had no documents or a home. When she finally saw him, time seemed to freeze. He was sitting alone in a corner, in front of a window, with his knees curled up to his chest. He didn't talk much, but there was something about him, a way of tilting his head, a small gesture with his hand, a way of biting his lip when he was pensive. Small details which to the rest of the world would be insignificant, but to Isabella, they were like signs in a language only she spoke. "Michael," she said, approaching cautiously. He lifted his head and their eyes met. Sad eyes, yes, but with a depth that made Isabella's heart race. He looked familiar, and there was a small scar on his hand, a star-shaped scar, right at the base of his thumb. Isabella could barely breathe. She knew that scar. It happened when Ethan, at 2 years old, fell from a seesaw in the park on a day that seemed as sunny as the one on which he disappeared. A scar she had kissed and cared for. But, no, she couldn't let hope deceive her again. 10 years of fruitless searching had taught her to be a skeptic. She swallowed the lump in her throat and sat in the chair across from him. "I'm Isabella," she said, her voice trembling. "I work here, and I just wanted to say, if you need anything at all, you can come to me." Michael just nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor, but for a brief moment, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. It was a smile she knew, a smile that haunted her every night in her dreams. She felt an electric current run through her body. It was a connection she couldn't explain, but it was there, strong and undeniable. From that day on, Isabella started spending more time with Michael. She didn't pressure him. She just observed him, looking for more clues, more confirmations. She saw him drawing, and noticed that he held the pencil in a peculiar way, the same way Ethan used to. She saw the way he laughed, a short and shy laugh, but one that sounded exactly like her son's laugh. The voice of reason said it was all just a coincidence, that she was just projecting her desires onto a lonely boy. But the voice of her heart, well, the voice of her heart was something she couldn't ignore. It was the same voice that had kept her searching for 10 years. The same voice that whispered he's alive on her darkest nights. The routine at the foster care center was peaceful. The lights turned off early, and the sound of teenagers whispering was replaced by the silence of the night. Isabella was finishing up paperwork at her desk, her mind still occupied with the similarity between Michael and Ethan. She forced herself to think about something else, to believe that the coincidence was just that, a coincidence. But then, she heard it. The melody was coming from Michael's room. She approached, the sound growing clearer. His voice was gentle, almost a whisper, and it carried an innocence she had never heard before. The words were not from a popular song. They were simple. They were hers. Sleep, my love, the world's a garden. Your dreams are flowers, growing without end. May the moon watch over you. May the sun find you. Until morning, may my love haunt you. The entire song. The lullaby she had created for Ethan when he was just a baby. The melody was unique. The words invented. No one else in the world besides her and theoretically Ethan would know this song. Tears filled Isabella's eyes. She remembered a night, more than 10 years ago, when Ethan was crying and she, exhausted, simply began to sing. The words came from her heart, and the melody was pure emotion. Her legs trembled. Her breath became shallow. The voice of reason vanished, drowned out by the scream of truth coming from within her. She could no longer ignore it. There were no more coincidences. There was only one single, impossible truth. Isabella slowly opened the door. Michael was lying on his bed, his eyes closed, the lullaby escaping his lips. He was unconscious, singing the song his mother had created for him. Isabella knelt by the bed, her hands trembling. "Michael," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Michael, where did you learn that song?" The boy opened his eyes. His expression was one of confusion, as if he didn't know he had been singing. He looked at her, then at the floor, and shrugged. "I don't know," he said, his voice groggy. I've always known it, ever since I can remember. It's like it's in my head, like it's a part of me." In that moment, Isabella needed nothing more. The mother's heart, which had been broken and mended by a decade of pain, was finally healed. She reached out, touched the boy's cheek, and the truth exploded in her chest, like fireworks in the sky. "Ethan," she thought. "My God, it's you." She could barely see through her tears, but the image of her son, the boy she had lost, was right in front of her. And the only thing she knew, with a certainty that transcended reality, was that she would not lose him again. The certainty in Isabella's heart was one thing, but in the real world, certainty needed proof. That same night, after the revelation of the song, Isabella made the call. With the help of the foster care center's director, she scheduled a DNA test. The process was quick, but the wait was an eternity. The days dragged on like years. Every minute was a battle between overwhelming hope and paralyzing fear. What if it was all a coincidence? What if she was just deluding herself again? The voices that had haunted her for a decade returned to whisper in her mind, "He's gone, Isabella. Let him go." But the voice of the lullaby was louder, stronger than any doubt. Isabella tried to keep herself busy. At the center, she could barely concentrate. Her eyes followed Michael everywhere. She watched him talking to the other teenagers, laughing and playing ball. He had the same eyes, the same curve to his nose, the same way of throwing his head back when he laughed. Every small detail was a confirmation, but she needed scientific proof. She remembered when she was waiting for Ethan to be born. The anxiety of the unknown, the wait to see that little face for the first time. But this was different. Now, she knew who he was, but she wasn't allowed to hold him as her own. He was a boy with a mysterious past, and she was a woman desperate for a miracle. They were so close, and yet, separated by a piece of paper. The night before the results, Isabella couldn't sleep. She was sitting in the living room, photos of Ethan spread across the coffee table. She picked up a photo from when he was 2.5. He was wearing an oversized hat, and his smile was squashed against the cap. But his eyes were unmistakable. She held the photo to her chest, her fingers pressing the image, as if she could feel the child through the paper. And in that moment, she felt a peace, a deep and unshakable certainty. "It's you, my love. I feel it. I know it." The phone rang at a.m. the next morning. The sound echoed in the silent house like a gunshot. Isabella held the receiver, her hand trembling so much she could barely press the answer button. "Mrs. Miller?" The voice on the other end said. "The results have arrived." Isabella couldn't speak. The voice on the line seemed distant, as if it were coming from a tunnel. "The results, they confirm the compatibility. It's a positive match. A perfect match." The words floated in the air for a moment before landing in Isabella's heart. The knot she had in her throat dissolved. The tears which she had held back for 10 years finally came. And they were not tears of sadness. They were of pure joy. He was real. The miracle had happened. Michael wasn't a stranger with a curious familiarity. He was Ethan, the boy she had lost. The news of the positive DNA test not only reunited mother and son, but also reopened a case that had been filed away for 10 years. The police, with the new information, began working with an urgency that hadn't existed before. The story of Michael or Ethan and his adoptive mother was a web of lies and suffering. The investigation revealed that 10 years earlier, a woman named Susan Gable had disappeared from the same city at the same time Ethan went missing. Susan was a desperate woman. She had tried to have children for years, and the pain of infertility consumed her. She used to frequent the same park as Isabella, watching children play, and her heart, broken by loneliness, became an instrument of desperation. In a moment of weakness, she saw Ethan alone, chasing a butterfly. To her, it wasn't a crime. It was an opportunity, a primal maternal instinct, perverted by pain. She took him, changed her name, and moved to different cities, always fleeing from a shadow that followed her. The shadow of her own guilt. Ethan's life over the past 10 years was not one of physical suffering, but of a silent confusion. The woman who raised him loved him in a way she thought was normal. She called him Michael and did her best to ensure he never questioned his identity. But memory is a funny thing. It can be suppressed, but never destroyed. Ethan always knew, deep in his soul, that he didn't belong there. He had small flashes of memory, a lullaby, the smell of apple pie, the laughter of a woman with long, brown hair. When his mother died, he was left alone and felt lost. The only thing that comforted him was that lullaby, the song he didn't know where it came from, but that connected him to a place he called home. With the truth revealed, Ethan's past merged with Isabella's. All the pieces fit together. The story of a mother who never gave up and a son who, deep down, never forgot, finally had a conclusion. The whole world learned of the story. The press covered the reunion, and people were moved by Isabella's resilience and Ethan's journey. It was a real-life fairy tale, proof that hope can indeed win. The Miller family, which had disintegrated after Ethan's disappearance, was finally united again. The reunion was a moment of pure catharsis. Hugs, tears, and the sound of Isabella's voice, repeating the only thing that mattered. "You're home, my love. You're home." When Isabella saw Ethan again, it wasn't like meeting a stranger. It was like a reunion with the part of her soul she had lost. She ran toward him, and he hugged her back with a strength that showed the longing of an entire lifetime. Both cried uncontrollably, a cry of relief and pain, a pain they had shared, but which, in that moment, dissolved into a feeling of unconditional love. Their lives didn't become perfect overnight. Ethan had to adapt. He was a teenager who suddenly discovered his entire life was a lie. He had memories of a childhood that wasn't his and of a mother who wasn't his. He was confused, and Isabella knew she needed to be patient. They began to rebuild their relationship. They spent time together, doing simple things, playing ball, watching movies, and, most importantly, talking. Isabella told him the story of his childhood, showed him the photo album, and explained how he was loved from day one. Ethan, in turn, shared his fragmented memories, the strange dreams he had, and the song that had always been in his head. The process was slow, but with each passing day, they grew closer. The bond between mother and son, which had been broken, was now mending. Isabella's love was the cement that held the pieces together. They returned to Ethan's childhood home, to Maplewood, to the room that was still waiting for him. The smell of home, the feeling of familiarity, the memories he didn't know he had began to come back. And the lullaby, which was once a distant whisper, was now a melody that echoed through the house, not as a secret, but as the song of a family. Ethan and Isabella's life became a new book. They went to therapy together, a safe space for both of them to talk about their pain and fear. They learned to live with the past, but also to build a future. Isabella, who had become an advocate for missing children, now had her own success. story to tell. She became a beacon of hope for other families. Ethan, in turn, found a purpose in his new life. He became the son she always knew he would be, gentle, curious, and above all, strong. They cooked together, laughed together, and cried together. They were healing, not perfectly, but genuinely. The emptiness Isabella had felt for 10 years was filled. Ethan's confusion was replaced by a sense of belonging. Their story became a beacon of hope, proof that, even in the darkest circumstances, the light of a family's love can find its way back home. Today, Isabella and Ethan walk side by side. They are not just mother and son, they are survivors. The scar on Ethan's thumb is a reminder of the past, but the smile on his face is a testament to the present. Their story is more than a miracle. It is proof that a mother's love is an unbreakable force. It doesn't fade, it doesn't forget, and it never, ever gives up. 2 years had passed since the reunion that shook Maplewood and inspired hearts around the world. Isabella and Ethan's life had found a new rhythm, a gentle melody built on the solid foundation of unconditional love and resilience. The house, which for so long had been a sanctuary of painful memories, now pulsed with a renewed energy. Ethan's room was no longer an untouched memorial, but a living space, filled with band posters, books, and the inevitable clutter of a teenager. On a sunny June afternoon, the sweet and familiar aroma of apple pie lingered in the kitchen. Ethan, now 15, was concentrating on the dough, following a recipe scribbled on a yellowed card, his grandmother's recipe, a grandmother he had never known, but whose recipe Isabella treasured. His movements were still a bit clumsy, but his intention was pure, to make a surprise for Isabella's birthday. Isabella watched from the doorway, a tender smile dancing on her lips. To see Ethan there, absorbed in the task, his hands covered in flour, was a gift that words could not describe. She remembered the lonely birthdays, the single candle flickering in the darkness of her pain. Now, the light was shining brightly in her life again. "Need any help, chef?" she asked. Approaching the counter, Ethan started, a guilty smile lighting up his face. "I almost messed it all up," he admitted, showing her the dough that was threatening to stick to the counter. Together, mother and son worked, their laughter mixing with the aroma of apple and cinnamon. Isabella taught him the tricks of the recipe, the stories behind each ingredient, transmitting not just a culinary tradition, but a link to a past that Ethan was rediscovering. Later that night, sitting at the kitchen table with the imperfect, but lovingly made pie between them, Ethan hesitated for a moment. "Mom," he began, his words a little uncertain. I'm so sorry, I don't remember your other birthdays." Isabella held his hand across the table, her eyes welling up. "My dear Ethan," she said, her voice choked with emotion, "every day that I have you back is a birthday for me. The past is behind us. What matters is the now, and all the birthdays we still get to celebrate together." In the living room, next to the old photos of a little Ethan, a new family portrait took a prominent place. In it, Isabella and Ethan smiled side by side, their eyes shining with the happiness of those who have overcome darkness and found the light. It was the visual proof of a new home, built not on absence, but on the strength of a love that never gave up. Their story was not just about a loss and a reunion, but about the resilience of the human spirit and the eternal power of a mother's love.